Hi, and welcome to Lights of the Round Table. My name is Susanna, and today we're going to be talking about tokenization once again. And this time, we're going to be talking about blockchain and how it's impacting the real estate market with a focus on a company that has been making the headways. The name is Propy. Propy is a company that has been transforming and is transforming on how we buy, sell, and think about property ownership. They're based in Tampa, and they've been on the forefront of this for a couple of years. With us, I am pleased to have Elias Leverett. He works for Propy, and he's in charge of bringing property rights on chain. And I asked him how he got involved in blockchain and in the real estate market.
Yeah, Susanna. So I really do appreciate you including me in on the meeting and letting me come and talk about just blockchain technology and share my expertise with tokenization. I'm very passionate about not just real estate, but also technology and more so over blockchain technology. You know, um, my first exposure to blockchain was reading the Bitcoin white paper in October of, I believe it was 2008, when it was literally first released. I have a heavy tech background, so all throughout the 90s, I'm 36. So I grew up in kind of that like age of where things were going from analog to digital, so as a kid, technology completely fascinated me, as well as creative cryptographic solutions,
Mhm.
and I remember and have been following like the cypherpunks and all of that, for years and years and years. And then kind of examining from like a philosophical view of what money is, and then kind of started going down these rabbit holes. And I remember looking at what happened with the real estate market when it crashed and the global financial crisis back in, '07, '08. And I remember just thinking, there's no way that the big banks are going to get bailed out. There's no way it can't. And there's no way they're too big to not fail. And I remember watching them get bailed out, and I became completely disillusioned. And then I remember the white paper, and I saw this change that is possible, a sovereign solution for people to be able to take back power. Not to go too far off on a philosophical kind of discussion,
You're right.
but these systems are antiquated. Whether it is financial, whether it's real estate, whether it's you name it, it's antiquated. So it's a time for change, and that time for change is now. And part of, back when the like when the real estate market had crashed, I saw this opportunity as well to get in on the foreclosure side of the market. So I started working with a company that had came onto the scene doing foreclosures, and did that for almost 10 years. And then the pandemic happened, and I had came across a couple of years before, I came across Propy with what they're doing. And they did the world's first real estate NFT with the sale of the Mike Arrington's Ukrainian apartment. And I had this aha moment that the next major use case for blockchain technology, for tokenization infrastructure, is real estate, because real estate is the largest illiquid asset class globally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So
I came up through some numbers, and I think that it surpasses the global GDP. And I think it was something like 501 trillion million. I don't know, the
trillion,
trillion.
trillion, yeah,
I
trillion.
know. It's amazing. I mean, um sorry. So how did you saw this opportunity, see somehow the opportunity, you introduce yourself to Propy. Give us an introduction of what Propy is all about, because boy, are they at the forefront of everything that we're doing. And we have talked and discussed about tokenization in my show. So tell us exactly what you're doing. And by the way, if you're new to our channel, we've been discussing tokenization, but this company, and this is why I'm excited to have Elias Leverett with us today, is one thing is to discuss how the shifts is happening, how blockchain is happening, but your company is not only pioneering, um, but is the first company. And oh my gosh, I have just had a brain fart. But they have been, I know what I wanted to say. You have been at least 6 or 7 times in the press making headlines in 2024 alone. That is how much you're evolving this whole blockchain evolution in the real estate market sector. So please continue now.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, even as we're speaking right now, I was just getting off of an X Space. So Propy actually was just doing part two of their major announcement with their crypto escrow services with Coinbase Institutional as the crypto custodian, right? So the whole vision behind who and what Propy is to bring property rights on chain, to democratize housing in a very transparent and immutable way. And there's no other perfect way to do that than the use of blockchain technology, So the whole reason that Propy is doing what it's doing is to be able to stop things like title fraud. Because as everybody that's likely listening to this podcast right now, especially those that just aren't in the US, but it's a global problem. But for some reason in the US, these antiquated systems, I hear stories day after day after day of examples of people losing their homes to title fraud because it is so easy to perpetrate title fraud and subsequently mortgage fraud. And then why? And we're not even talking about wire fraud. Wire fraud just last year was a $4 billion a year loss. In Florida alone, it was $23 million. So when you introduce blockchain technology and you're bringing property rights on chain, A, they can't be seized or taken from another entity because they're immutable and they're on chain. B, you're mitigating the risk of title fraud completely because they're transparent. The whole snapshot is completely taken away. So the idea is we're sitting here disrupting the title industry as well. So part of what Propy is not just a technology company for bringing on the property rights on chain, but we also do it through our title and escrow business. Because I know that, Susanna, you're telling me that your audience seems to understand what tokenization is a little bit better than probably your average layperson that doesn't, right? So for your audience, when you talk in terms of tokenization and you're tokenizing a real world asset, it doesn't matter what you're tokenizing, it has to be validated off chain. Mm-hmm. Because it originated off chain, that RWA, it has to be validated off chain. Okay. So there has to be some kind of oracle there to do that. So when we talk in terms of real estate, the way that you validate ownership is done through title. That's title and escrow. So Propy title is that cornerstone for off-chain validation for property rights. Because right now what's happening is everybody, the term tokenization has been co-opted by Web2 snake oil salesmen, where they're going to large institutions, they're going to venture capital, they're going to different funds, they're going to GPs and LPs and saying, hey, I have this magic wand here that's tokenization. I'm going to resolve liquidity for you. But in truth be told, they're not, because they're just creatively tokenizing financial rights under the actual property rights, because there is no regulation right now within the United States and a lot around the world in regards to this stuff. And that's one way that Propy is trying to kind of change that, is to create a conversation and a landscape for those to be able to take their property rights, bring them on chain, tokenize it, and then be able to open up what they're able to do with it to a whole new world of DeFi and banking.
Wow. Yeah, no. And before we get too technical, for those who are just new, let's go through why don't we explain how Propy deals with buying and selling property. Let's say that I am selling my property to you. What's the benefit of going through you?
So I don't want to say it's a loaded question, but it's almost twofold. So there is the traditional side of what we do. Okay. So we operate with title and escrow in 3 different states currently through Florida, Arizona, and Colorado. So if a traditional buyer is wanting to close with us, there are value propositions that we have through our regular title and escrow, where if I'm talking to a real estate agent or somebody that's just doing a FISBO, a for sale by owner, they're like, well, why would I close with Propy title and escrow, Elias? Why would I do that? So there's a menagerie of value there for marketing, lead generation, business development, and we also have our own Web3 prop tech, our platform that is transaction management, offer management, everything in between, meant to be a one-stop shop for a real estate transaction, allowing the real estate agents and brokers to transact real estate limitlessly, to truly, as the BBC put it, to be the Amazon of real estate with our platform.
Wow.
So that's on the one side of, I'll say, the Web 2.5. Okay.
Mhm.
And then in
Not
addition
quite.
to so I'll just say for like the
Yeah.
web 2.5, not quite web 3, but like the traditional closings, because every transaction that we close, we record traditionally with the recorders courts, but we also record it on chain as well. So every single property that we're closing is also getting a title NFT with it, with that whole snapshot, boom, there on the actual blockchain. The flip side of that coin, and part of what we're starting to see more and more, is if somebody's utilizing Propy to say NFT their property, okay? Part of that value proposition is they're future proofing themselves, bringing it on chain. Because my question is usually, are you planning on owning this property for 5+ years? Majority of the time, the answer is yes. Okay, well, I can definitively say within the next 2 to 5 years, regulation will be there 100%. The only reason it hasn't is because we're in an election cycle right now. So these large institutional players are demanding regulation, and that's coming very soon within the next 2 years. So once we have clear regulation, when you have your property rights and title on chain, guess what happens? That asset is now liquid. It's no longer illiquid. So you're able to utilize the concept of DeFi in a way that wasn't really thought about before. So, for example, one of the things that we're doing is the ability to collateralize the actual tokenized RWA through a RWA NFT. And you can do things like DeFi loans. You can collateralize it. You can also collateralize your cryptocurrency as well to be able to use as a down payment on another property. So we're completely enabling these new different kinds of concepts for people out there that may not have realized that it was possible before.
Okay, so if I sell, let's say that I sell a property and I put it on chain. Well, no, that means that I have liquidity already. But if I buy a property and it has a value, how do you deal with fluctuation of value? I'm sorry to ask you this question. I'm trying to conceptualize everything on the blockchain, and there's so much volatility right now as well, including with the crypto coins, whatever you might use. I mean, I don't know, buy a house with Bitcoin, it's worth, it might be worth something tomorrow. It might not worth anything.
Exactly. To answer your question, there's kind of also like a twofold side of that question, right? So if if you're selling a property, you're also going to have to still go through, for right now, traditional means, for like appraisals, inspections, and all of those things. Okay. So the value still is going to be recorded with the actual tax assessor's office as well. You're going to have an appraiser that comes in. You're not going to want to buy a house if you don't know what the value of it. You're not going to trust somebody else's word for it, right?
Right.
If I'm buying your property, I'm not going to just buy it as is and just say, oh, okay, I accept that that's $1 million because that's what you're asking for. Now, part of a real estate negotiation is I'm going to bring in an appraiser during this agreed upon contingency period, this 7 14 days, whatever, and then if the appraiser says we're good on that price, then okay, and then that's where your mortgages come into play with value. So there's still these traditional means for value, and then tying it to the price of like Bitcoin or Ethereum or another kind of cryptocurrency, it still is going to be represented by like US dollars, right? So you're going to have like a trading pair. In this case, it would be stablecoin USDC.
Right.
So if Bitcoin is the whole idea at the end of the day is that one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. That's the end goal. But
Right.
until we get there, we still have to look at the value in comparison to what it is worth that minute in dollars. So if Bitcoin right now is 68,000, your house, yeah, it can fluctuate between. So if you're looking at the price and it's listed in Bitcoin, it's just going to be listed in Bitcoin. But of course, if you put the trading pair of $1 on it, that price of the dollar can fluctuate 10+% in a given 48-hour span.
Okay.
So yeah, so that kind of answers your question,
Okay,
hopefully.
sort of. Okay, now there's one thing about I know about a little bit, and my friend who is in real estate wanted to know if, since we're talking about you streamlining titles, there's this thing called in real estate called a gap. I guess from the underwriter to the realtor, I guess there's I guess to certify the title of a purchase, of a home. There's a 2 week more or less wait and that counties usually take, and we were wondering, is that what you're taking care of? I mean, once a sale, how does a sell, let's say I want to buy a house, I want it now, but between me getting that title, it takes about 2 weeks. Is that what you're trying to sort of narrow? Is that a real time situation that you're providing us now, or what? I don't know if I'm asking the question because I'm not a realtor. So,
Yeah. So from my experience, typically, yeah, there's a gap on the back end after a sell of you having to wait to be able to get that title, but that's just the county. That's the county. That's just bureaucracy being slow.
right,
Um, so right now, the for you to actually have that title physically in hand, yeah, that's one thing that we're trying to speed up. The whole idea is that it would be an instant wallet to wallet transfer. That
right.
everything within that real estate transaction is completely automated and instant. So to answer your question, the gap that you're talking about, that's still that takes place, but you still have legal ownership of that property. You don't have to wait that 2 weeks to be able to say, oh, I'm the legal owner, because I mean you still have like a certificate, the title company is still providing you with documentation of being recorded. So I mean, you just don't have the official like from the county title until like it takes them a couple of weeks. Sometimes, I mean, during the pandemic, it was taking upwards of like 4 or 5 weeks.
Mhm.
But yeah,
All
that's
right.
still there.
So is Propy then, how is Propy facilitating then the whole market sector other than titles? I mean, how far are you from offering what you are to me having an app that says Propy, and I just want to go and press on a button and I say, I want this home, I want it, and it goes through Propy from the beginning to the end. The whole the customer experience. I guess that's what would be the ultimate goal for you guys, right?
So I mean, we're there now, 100%. It's just the way that we do it is through legal structures, through using SPVs,
Okay.
through those kinds of mechanisms, right? So until until government recognizes, title blockchain, deeds and things of that nature, we're still having to structure things in the way that we NFT. So it's very still possible right now if you were to go onto the Propy website, look for a property, and say I want to buy this, you still could still go through that flow. And we're getting there. It's mass adaptation. It's hitting critical mass is what we're striving for right now. And that's why we've come out with other initiatives like Propy Keys, which is a gamified model to kind of, for people to mint addresses, validate ownership through title, and then actually tokenize the actual properties that they own. So there's these different initiatives that we're doing to kind of expedite the process, to where we're a little bit further along, because let's face it, I mean, the industry is very antiquated and the major players don't want change because you can't monetize on it in a way that they are before or even right now, you know.
Yeah, I could
So
see that. So who are you cutting it through the process? The middleman, right?
exactly. And it's also cutting in and disrupting the title industry as a whole, because think about it. The whole purpose of title insurance is completely no longer needed
Right.
with blockchain, because now it's a title blockchain warranty. So think about how much premium title insurance is of closing costs for somebody. It's like 2,000, 3,000 plus dollars, depending on the price of the house. So imagine if you didn't have to pay that and you still had the security and transparency and peace of mind, knowing that this property was the title was clear, you're free. There's no liens, encumbrances, or anything like that on it. So it's all these value propositions that are actualized, and the title industry right now, they don't they don't want it. They don't like it.
Well, yeah, you're throwing them out of business. That's basically, but I think it's one of the, I think it's, I own a title. I have a title, but I'm amazed how I still have to pay a title to actually certify what I already have that is already my own. I mean, it's just like, why am I paying you when I already have it over here? And they say, oh, well, we have to go through the process. I mean, to me, it's just like ludicrous.
Exactly.
I mean, I already have a certificate. Why do you have to create another one to prove that I have it when I already have it and I can prove it? It's a circle. It is a circle. So let me understand a little bit about your about Propy. You I went to the website and you already have around about 10,000 real estate agents that are certified. They have to go through. Do they have to be real estate agents prior to being onboarded to your system, or can somebody who knows a little bit about crypto, and of course you have to I think that's one of the tests have to do with you have to know the basics of blockchain functionalities,
Oh yeah.
KYC and everything else, so do you have to, for example, I don't have a license, but I'm interested in being part of Propy. Can I become a real estate agent through you, or do I still have to go through the old traditional certification and licensing process?
So you can still go through and become like a crypto certified agent. You can take the test, you can do the learnings and so forth and so on. But you wouldn't be a real estate agent. You still that's a whole separate thing done through the state governments and so forth and so on for licensing. You'd have to go through like a brokerage to hang your license. So you still could go through and get the knowledge, of course, and still be on the platform, because the platform's not just open to real estate agents. It's a platform meant for that one-stop shop of a real estate transaction. So if you're a buyer, if you're a seller, anybody is able to go on to the actual platform and make use of it.
Hmm.
100%.
So
So
it's interesting. So how does Coinbase? I also have an account on Coinbase. So what is it that you're really offering through Coinbase? What proposition are you offering?
so there are custodian for crypto escrow. So if you have, you know, I think it was like 12% first-time home buyers use cryptocurrency for down payment. So if you have that crypto, you're not going to want to have to liquidate it to be able to use it as for a down payment. So part of the value proposition of somebody going through Coinbase is they can actually take that Bitcoin or their crypto and use it as a down payment for the actual property without having to liquidate it. And then if the sale doesn't go through, like all that process that happens. So it's a very streamlined process. And Coinbase is just being the custodian for that for us through Coinbase institution, through Coinbase Prime.
Oh, exactly. I noticed that you had to be a Coinbase Prime. So what about the volatility? I mean, when I press that button right there and I say Bitcoin is, because you see it fluctuating, in milliseconds, where does Propy manage? How do you guys manage this risk between buyers and sellers when these types of transactions are happening on the fly, I guess? I don't know.
Hey, of course. I mean, it's the same kind of question if you're like going to buy or sell the crypto, by the time
All right.
you hit that sell button or that buy button, the price could have dropped, X amount percent, that's just the nature of the cryptocurrency, so it's locked in at the price
All right.
when they go to lock it up. So it's not like there's like this like huge waiting period when they go to actually lock it up into the escrow. The price where it's at has a real world dollar value where it's locked in, So it's that agreed upon price at the point of sell when it actually enters into the account.
All right.
So it'd be the same concept if you're telling me, hey, I'm going to sell you my car for, 1 Bitcoin, right? You look at it in terms of like the amount of Bitcoin, not the terms of the actual dollars. Because remember, 1 Bitcoin is 1 Bitcoin
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the
Okay.
day.
So
So
are
that's
you
kind of
going?
what we're going to shift to.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, which is true. I don't deal with Bitcoins, unfortunately, but or fortunately, actually, I don't. It's just too much for me. It's the old dinosaur, call it. But what about other cryptocurrencies or stable coins? Are you planning to now with your partnership with Coinbase? Are you planning to offer the consumer to be able to purchase through other cryptocurrencies? I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know.
it's not just Bitcoin at all. It's any cryptocurrency that's supported by Coinbase, we support as
Any.
well. Yeah, any cryptocurrency that's supported by Coinbase, we're good to go. So it
Really,
doesn't matter.
XLM, XRP, AVAX,
Yep, yep.
AVAX. I
Say
don't even.
stable coins as well, USDC
Yeah.
as well. So
Okay. Well, that's quite important because not everybody has Bitcoin. It's just too many fees. I was reading through a little bit of the history, and you guys have over $5 billion worth of property that you've already transacted over the last, I don't know, 3 years, I think, or more. Um, but you're all over the world, or at least aim to be all over the world, besides those 3 states in the United States, which I'm hoping that thanks to your partnership with Coinbase, you'll be able to expand perhaps in other states. What other countries do you support?
So to address that really quick, we are currently in talks and announcements will be made a little bit further down the road, but we are expanding into other states, as well as we're looking into other countries. But right now, the focus is yes in the U.S. Because a lot of what we do too, I mean, we're doing it through title and escrow in the United States, right? So
Right.
globally, title and escrow is kind of a different concept, more notaries, right? So it's all about finding that the validator, if you will, of that off-chain asset, the RWA. and then also making sure that you are able to operate and do what you're doing in a legally compliant way. Because some jurisdictions have very stringent regulation, or they have no regulation, but they're very ambiguous about it, as the US is as well. So we have done stuff like in Japan, Spain, Ukraine, Bulgaria, and several others. But right now, it's the focus is on the US for right now, and I know there are plans to expand globally, but that's somewhere on a roadmap further down the road.
All right. So I was doing some research on your platform again. Okay, so you started with Ethereum, but somehow you transfer and created your own platform. I think it's called Bit Bit Bitrium. Bitrium. Did I read that properly? Or are you solely based on
So
Ethereum?
yeah. So okay. So let me add some clarity. So the Pro token that we have that's used for our platform, that is on Ethereum. So when we record our title NFTs, those are recorded on currently right now Arbitrum, which is an L2 blockchain. Okay. So then Propy Keys, which is that other initiative I was telling you about, right? That is on the base blockchain, right? So the idea is to be all base at the end of the day, but the pro tokens, the native pro token, it's on Ethereum, and that's what's supported by Coinbase right now. There is a pro token that is on base, and that is able to be bought on different dexes as well. Support for Coinbase is in the pipeline. Um, I would hope by the end of the year, but for sure within the next 6 months, I would imagine that that support will be there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, interesting. So I thank you for clarifying that. Now, there's another clarification, and I know that our audience is also quite knowledgeable about DAO, that's decentralized. Um, I know it. I cannot think of acronyms today. Forgive me, but those are decentralized organization. What is it? Autonomous, decentralized autonomous organizations. Boy, am I having a bad Friday today. Um, and you're incorporating those within the onboarding real estate agents. Is this to keep your company transparency? Are these tokens that this DAO mechanism that you are building, is it not only for transparency, are these voting tokens that you're providing your real estate agents?
Correct. Yeah. So the pro token, there is a DAO that Propy has. There will be maybe some announcements with what's going on with that. There is a DAO that exists with Propy, and there is like for rewards for things like that. Because we had a set of NFTs that we did, the Meta Shredder agents that came out. And with that, you also had access and were allocated X amount of tokens to be able to vote in for governance in the DAO as well. And then the pro tokens as well serve as like a governance token in addition to utility. So yeah, so it's for transparency as well, you know. So
No. Well, thanks again for clarifying. So then how do you hold see? All right, so we are in the political period here in the United States. Voting is about to, elections day is upon us pretty soon. Um,
right.
and so you did touch upon regulatory frameworks that are needed. What are you hoping that 2025 will bring for you and Propy? I mean, for Propy, the agency, as far as the regulations needed to advance the goals and outcomes that you're seeking.
Clear, defined regulation, plain and simple.
Are we
There,
talking
because
about, are we talking
there,
about, sorry, one thing. Are we talking about clear regulations on the crypto sphere, or are we talking about clear regulations on the real estate market and what needs to happen to change in order for those to happen?
More so on the crypto side, but both. Because when it comes on the crypto side, there is no regulation right now.
Right.
The SEC just loves giving Wells notices to everybody. you know, and that's part of the Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase. He even went and publicly stated that, hey, look, well, where's the regulation? What, like, okay, so and then when they went after CZ, Binance,
Yeah.
and locked him up, it was the same thing. Well, the DOJ went after him, but for what though? I mean, I know for what they said, but I mean, so now they need to clearly define and create this regulatory landscape to say, hey, if you're operating in the US, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. What is a digital security? What's classified? And they've gone back and forth on it, so many times they flip flop. I mean, look at the XRP lawsuits that have happened. You know, they say they're friendly to it, but they're not at all. So my hope and my goal, and I think that majority of people in the space can agree that we want clear definition of what is and what is not a digital security. What regulations are there for this industry as a whole? And are we going to create regulation that enhances and um, incentivizes adaptation and innovation within the United States? Because right now, a lot of companies they're afraid to operate in the U.S. You have all these unicorns, if you will, that pivoted to AI.
Hmm.
Like, oh yeah, we have blockchain on the back end, but we're AI. That was the new shiny toy. That was the new thing that the unicorns are trying to strive to. So when you start hitting $1 billion market caps, the SEC takes very quick notice and then starts bothering you with a Wells notice. So to answer your
Right.
question very succinctly, it's clear, concise regulation within the crypto industry for 2025. Um, I'm of the school of thought as well that it doesn't matter who wins at the end of the day. This technology, the people want it, the institutions want it. It's going to happen one way or the other. Bitcoin is going to continue to go up regardless of who wins, who doesn't win. The train has left the station. You're on it or you're not. If you understand Bitcoin, you buy more of it. So,
Yeah, well, I think that the public push and adoption for blockchain is the number one priority, I would say. And I think that perhaps the average person could maybe take a different outlook to blockchain when it comes to the opportunities versus the challenges. I think the opportunities ways outweighs um, and favors actually the sovereignty of a person. I mean, that's where I come from. And I think that with that message alone, it unifies and it should unify a lot of people. It should unify a country, if that's another way to put it. I think that the innovation, AI itself, will, things will come to fruition, I think, sooner. And I think that right now, what we're hearing, at least on the mainstream, is that people are looking for that adoption. They're looking for clearing guidance. I do have to ask you another question, though. Um, perhaps, perhaps it's also a clear indication that we don't need these quote unquote departments per se, but the power should actually revert back to the states. Because if we go back to again, blockchain adoption. Um, for example, people don't know that there's already a blockchain adoption and there's legislation already in Florida, but you have to actually literally go and look. Wisconsin, I think Wisconsin is one of those that has legislation about blockchain, and I think since 2019. Um, so we have also what tender, legal tender back to gold and silver. Um, Arizona has been in that, it has been having it since 2013, I believe, 2012, 2013. So it seems to me that, I don't know, it sounds to me like the decision is really up to the states to see where that adoption can be. Of course, a framework probably is that, the federal, but I think it really reverts back to the states and what works best for its citizens. Don't you think so?
I agree, but we also open a can of worms when we start talking about this because we start talking about federal rights versus state rights, and it opens up a can of worms with certain kinds of topics. But the point of it all is, as well, is the United States. It's a big country. It really is. It's a very diverse country with varying uh, ideologies, politically, religiously, philosophically, financial, all of it. So the idea that one set of rules and regulations can apply to every single citizen across every single state always seemed it didn't jive well with me, you know. So to your point, to be able to put the decisions and the rights back with the states,
Mhm.
I 100% agree. But to take it a step further, to enable governments to be ran on a DAO, that is what I foresee the future being, is to be govern a decentralized autonomous organization is a perfect use case for a government
Mhm.
because people don't, it's not just the US where people don't trust their vote, they don't trust the government. It's a global problem, especially in places like Latin America, for example, just around the world. Look at what just happened in Venezuela.
No, yeah.
I'm still scratching my head how Maduro is still even in power. That befuddles me as well as the rest of the world. But if we had blockchain technology, it would be irrefutable to where who won what and how, you know. So we can start moving towards a place where our society, it's truly a sovereign solution, to where you don't have to have what would you need a politician for? They would just be an influencer at that point in time,
Right.
you know? And then it becomes a thing of just making sure that the education is there for people that are voting. You know, it's a whole other can of worms in the conversation that could be opened up that we probably shouldn't start going into because
No,
it's
of course, no, but
other.
but yes, and I think that is certainly what blockchain should. It's the sovereignty of oneself, the sovereignty of a country, the sovereignty of a community, and what works best for them. So going back to Propy though, you're in Latin America. Is Propy venturing themselves out a little bit? Are you guys doing a little bit of market testing and trying to see how you can assist also in Latin America on this process or not? Because adoption
So,
is not for everybody. I mean, United States is pretty good at adoption, crypto adoption. Europe too. I'm not sure what the market is right now. I was talking to some Mexican developers, and they say that really the public adoption of crypto is still quite rather slow. So I am assuming that that's what you're seeing a little bit.
so to answer to very quickly answer the first part of that question,
Yeah.
right now, business development into Latin America is I'm just here, just visiting family. I'm just here remotely working. So from that perspective, Propy's just focused on the US. So just to
Mhm.
make that very clear. But to speak on adaptation, so in Latin America, for example, in perspective of just prop tech, for example, so there is no prop tech really here in Latin America, inclusive of Mexico, for example, right? So it creates the real estate market is very interesting for Latin America, meaning that there are real estate agents, but if you were to need to buy a house and hey, can you pass me your listing? There is no MLS. they're passing you a Instagram page with photos, and then their CRM they're using, like a Salesforce or a HubSpot, is literally Google Sheets with phone numbers.
Mm.
So it's very, very basic. And part of the reason for that is the cost to access these different SaaS solutions. So what I will say though is that crypto adaptation at a consumer level, yes, it's slow because they view crypto in a very different lens than somebody in a first world country like the US, for example. So in Latin America, what I will say is the developers and the builders and the communities here are much larger and stronger than I've seen globally. There are so many different clubs, so many different organizations that are fostering the next unicorns, because traditionally Latin America is not known for exporting tech solutions, you know?
Right,
So I think what countries like El Salvador, for example, they're setting themselves up for success. Argentina as
right.
well, with what Javier Mele is doing there, you know? So, for example, in Argentina, in the tech industry, the competition is fierce. If you're trying to get into the tech industry and you're in Argentina, it's hard, it's tough, it's fierce. And that's one of the beautiful things that I see that this technology is enabling, is for communities to come together and realize that this technology is meant for everybody, not just a singular person or singular reason. It's meant to democratize. And I wanted to, I kind of coined this term, the democratization of democracy. That's what
Mm.
I'm seeing in real time. And it's a beautiful thing. And I hope that, the United States will continue to also befriend and also take notice of that and help lead the innovation with that.
Yeah. Well, now that you mentioned Argentina, I just published, I think a day or two ago, something about Argentina has surpassed adoption, from Brazil. I mean, Brazil was leading it. And now Argentina just became the forefront of blockchain innovation and adoption for Latin America. So kudos to them. I find that really, because Drex, you have Brazil with Drex and BRICS, and they've been doing a lot of testing with CBDCs, things like that, and trying to reach the unbanked and underbanked in that area, and actually really being active about it through various services. But I just could not believe that Argentina surpassed. So now they take the baton. So I just wanted to make that sure. And I'm still trying to find the headline that I did. But, when you're,
But we have
uh,
to look at we have to understand the reason for that, though.
oh,
Like look
yeah.
at before Javier Mele came in, they were going through hyperinflation.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, for
so you had
years.
little like crypto cabas where people were trying to get USDT because USDT was more so a better thing to buy and sell than the local fiat. So that's a whole other can of worms that we can discuss. CBDC versus stablecoin and that regulatory framework. Where does the future of fiat and emerging markets lie? Is it going to be stablecoin? Is it going to be like with what, like BRICS as well as NATO? Like what is like what like because the global financial systems are going to have to shift one way or
Right.
the other. So it's not just like look what's happening with Nayib Bukele. The IMF is really not happy with him right now. They're like, hey, Naive, Bitcoin's not the greatest thing. Like, can you stop? And he's like, yeah, no, I'm going to go ahead and buy back all my debt. I'm going to make sure my country's great. And then so these other world leaders are going to him saying, hey, what's your playbook? People are taking notice of that, and that's why I'm very hopeful that, you know, um, it'll be interesting to see where the U.S. is within the next year,
I
for
would
sure.
say so. I would say so, especially because I know that if there's one body of government or governance has been trying to push is um, in Congress has been this whole idea of stable coins. That group has been really pushing forward to have a regulatory framework there. I can't think of their name. I think it's CTCC or CTC, the
Well,
acronyms.
CTCC.
Yeah, so they've been really pushing forward and trying to get some sort of resolution, approval and resolution as to this whole crypto governance and regulatory framework that United States needs. But I think that it will come. I think that many other countries with breaks with CBDCs being tested in various parts in order to have that kind of parallel economies is necessary. And I think that, United States is just where it is. Um, and I think it's just inherently obvious that it will come to fruition. It's just not our time, or our time is about to happen, in the next hopefully in the next few weeks. And I think it would be amazing. And I mean, boy, if that happens, imagine, I mean, the world of opportunity that opens up to the just average citizen in the United States. They don't even have a clue how much this could really, really evolutionize our quality of life, our sovereignty, our power, purchasing power. Folks, I mean, that's what we're really talking about, purchasing power, liquidity. I mean, we could get really creative and yet profit and have so much abundance, you know?
It's something that I see because I have a different worldview than a lot of people in the US. I think there's a difference between being impoverished and poor in the United States and then being impoverished and poor in an emerging country, you know? And to be able to see that this technology really can change people's lives in such a profound way, and not just their lives, but their children's lives, their families' lives for years to come, to where, to understand what it truly means to be poor in a third world country, and to have the opportunity to wear like what WorldCoin is doing,
Mm.
with their airdrops of their token, even that is something that is life changing for some people.
It is.
50 like $30 a month for somebody in certain places of the world is completely life changing. And part of this technology is that you can have things like regenerative finance, to where every month, and these concepts lead into a universal income benefit, because that's another conversation for another time. But when we start talking about AI, these countries in Latin America are looking at it very seriously, and they're like, "Whoa, hold on, we're gonna have to look at this and regulate this, because we can't have you automating away all of these jobs, because the economic impact would be horrible, because we saw what unemployment rates did to us during the pandemic." So imagine, good God, imagine like the Philippines, for example. I would have to pull up the exact numbers, but look at how much of the economy is propped up by call centers and data centers and those kinds of things, right? So, what were to happen if unemployment within a 30-day span of 90% of your country's economy just went? It would be chaos. It's not something that somebody could even fathom. So that was one of the bigger conversations that Andrew Yang, for example,
Hmm.
he was trying to talk about. Sam Altman of OpenAI has been talking about. It's that AI and blockchain need each other. Blockchain is what will keep AI honest, and AI is what is going to help automate the world. But we have to do it in a very smart way, because unemployment rate shifting even 2%, 3%, could be disastrous, not just for the United States, but for other countries. So to be able to use, and people are like, well, how can a country like tax dollars can afford that? Well, that's the beautiful thing is blockchain technology offers a way to not to need to have taxes or tariffs, you know, and that's a whole other conversation for another time. But
It is
like,
another conversation, but it is actually exciting because it really opens up opportunities. It really opens up the opportunity of oneself to sort of think about how to reinvent themselves, what they would like to do. I think that the innovation itself can propel other innovation. And I think that there's so much we could do that doesn't have to be redundant, like the paper stamping on a document, your typical government worker, you know, um, uh, just stamping stamps and certifying with those. I mean, things like that. I think there's a lot more than a person can do. But before we just say goodbye, um, will you have an event? There is an event happening in Miami, November. I'm not sure exactly. Could you please tell us what it is and who's going to be there?
yeah, so it is going to be November the 7th and 8th in Miami at the Miami Convention Center. And the summit is the Web3 and property rights. We're going to have, I mean, it's just a crazy list of speakers ranging from Hernando de Soto, for example, a world renowned economist, to Cynthia Loomis, who's the senator advocate for crypto regulations, Michael Casey, Anthony Scaramucci, John D'Agostino, Francis Suarez, the mayor, Tim Draper, Natalia, our CEO, of course, and many, many, many others. The Bearable Bull is going to be there. Maya Vander, Gary Cardone, Matt Easton, Robert Croak. I mean, the list is just, it goes on and on. It's a 2-day event. For your listeners, you could definitely go to our website and check that out and see about the event. They can also follow us on our X page, LinkedIn, as well as Facebook and Instagram as well. And then also join our Telegram channel as well, which is Propy Inc.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much again, Elias. It's really nice having you. I really enjoy the conversations that we not only talked about your company, the one that you represent. I know that you're very much embedded with AI. It's one of your passions, and you certainly spoke about it. And we hope that next year, God's willing, that we are all in a better place as far as buying and purchasing our homes. I really cannot wait for actually, I guess what I'm looking for is that Amazon experience that if I like a home, I just click it. And I know it is, but still, I think that I guess I want it to happen now is that immediate gratification that we're still not quite there. So I thank you very much. And we'll hope to see you
Thank
at
you.
the event. Thanks so much.
Yes. Thank you, Susanna. It was great talking to you. Thank you to your audience for tuning in.